All right, welcome once again to our Extreme Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Kress, and today we have got Garrett Madison joining us. The Extreme Leadership Podcast is an opportunity for us to talk about leadership and high-performance teams through the lens of through the lens of high mountain and polar expeditions. Garrett is the founder of Madison Mountaineering and has been guiding people to the summit of Everest, K2, and lots of other mountains for many, many years. Garrett and I recently spent a little bit of time together at Mount Vincent High Camp. And today, Garrett and I are going to have a conversation around some of his experiences in the mountains and in polar regions. So welcome, Garrett. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Scott. Great to see you again after so many months since we were at Vincent High Camp together.
Okay, there you go. As soon as you start talking, the camera froze. It seems to be unfrozen now. So,
okay.
Hopefully it's good. Yes, yeah, a lot has gone on. I've been, trying to get you on this podcast for a while now, and you're just on expedition after expedition and busy guys. And I know you're going to be heading down to Antarctica in not too long, and so it's great that you've got a little bit of time to spend with us today. So before we get into the topics of leadership and team performance, let's get to a little bit about Garrett. Pretty accomplished guy. You've done a lot of amazing things. I know you're a humble guy, so you don't always like to talk about all the different things you've done, but that's what people want to hear today. So let's we'll get into it here. So tell us a bit about your background. How did you get started in mountaineering?
So I'm from the Seattle area, Pacific Northwest, North America. And from a young age, my father and I would go out on hiking, backpacking trips in the summers, and love just going out into the backcountry and getting up to some high mountain lakes and some ridge lines, scrambling up to small peaks. And then when I was in high school, he asked me if I wanted to try Mount Rainier, which is the big icon of the Pacific Northwest. And we didn't have the technical skill or experience, so we signed up to go with the guide service, got our training literature, did all of our equipment, got it all ready together, and met our guides and had an amazing climbing experience. And I just was hooked from that point onwards in life to want to be in the high mountains.
And then you ended up guiding on Rainier for quite a while, did you not?
Yes. Yeah. A few years later, when I was at university, I had a summer job as an apprentice mountain guide with RMI, Rainier Mountaineering Incorporated. And that was just a wonderful experience for me. I did that for many, many summers, and then had my first full-time job guiding from about 2005-06 onwards. Was at Alpine Ascents as the guide manager, expedition leader for 7-8 years, and then left just over 10 years ago to start my own company. Yeah. It was March of 2014. It's been a wonderful ride ever since.
Rainier is a great training ground for many young guides to get into the business and to learn a lot in a short period of time. How many times did you summit Rainier? I'm sure it's been quite a few.
Yeah, I believe it's over 200 now.
Over 200, yeah.
Yeah, very thankful for all the months, the summer months I got to spend up there, going up and down different routes on the mountain. And you're right, it's such a great training ground, especially with the weather, because we get these Pacific storms rolling in from the west, and can be very hazardous, challenging conditions. So great training up there on the high glaciers of Rainier.
Yeah. So over 200 summits of Rainier. What are some of other notable accomplishments that people might be interested to know about?
Oh gosh. So I've been to Everest 17 times, 14 times to the summit, hopefully 15 next spring. And we'll tie Dave Hahn for the American-born record of Everest summits. K2, 9 expeditions, 4 times to the summit. A couple times I stayed in base camp to manage the team. And then lots and lots of trips to other big peaks around the world. Mount Vincent, 27 times to the top. Lots of climbs in South America, Aconcagua, Ojos del Salado, Ecuador volcanoes, over to Asia, other peaks in Nepal and Pakistan, other 8,000 meter peaks. But just really love it. Feel very fortunate to get to be out there with so many like-minded people, and hope to keep going for a while.
Yeah. And so many people today are chasing the 7 summits. How many times have you done the 7 summits?
Well, let's see. Some of them I've climbed many times.
Yeah.
Like Vinson or Aconcagua or Everest now is getting up there pretty high. But some not that many times. So I've only been to Carson's Pyramid 3 times.
Okay.
So I guess, I visited all the 7 summits
Yeah.
at one point or another in my life, but some more than others.
I know every trip is special for a different reason, but do you have any favorite mountains or favorite regions?
Yeah, I'd have to say Mount Everest is just such a special spiritual place for me. I really enjoy going back there. It gets a bad rap these days in the media, but a lot of what the media says I don't find to be true about Mount Everest. And despite crowds on the mountain, generally we're able to be up there on the summit when it's not crowded and enjoy the view from the top of the mountain for an hour or so on a beautiful day.
Yeah, it's, I think in modern Everest, it's all about its leadership, and it's about planning and strategy to make it a great experience. You can go there and feel that it's crowded and dirty or whatever, but then you can also go there and have an amazing experience, based on leadership, based on your personal attitude, based on your overall plan, strategy, organization. The other thing that you said, which is I want to just key on for a second, is you said it was a very spiritual mountain to you. I was actually just talking to a friend of mine this morning whose daughter is doing a grade 12 thesis on Mount Everest. And he contacted me and said, hey, can you talk to my daughter about Everest and what she wants to focus on, really? And I don't know a lot about it yet because I haven't spoken to her, but she wants to focus on how spirituality is connected to Everest. And so how would you describe, you said that Everest is a spiritual mountain to you. What do you mean by that? How do you describe that?
Well, that's a great question. And I think ultimately for me, when I'm there, there's no denying that I just feel like I'm in a spiritual place, especially at the summit. There's something about the very tippy top of Mount Everest. It's like an energy vortex with energy, I think, flowing up through the mountain, different ridge lines coming out at the summit. And it's really hard to describe, but it's just an amazing sensation for me to be there at the tippy top of the mountain. And Everest being set where it is, the Buddhists have for a long time inhabited the northern and southern areas around Mount Everest. Obviously, when we trek into base camp on the Nepal side, we trek through the Khumbu Valley and visit many of the Sherpa villages and the monasteries that have been there for hundreds of years. And they view the mountain as mother goddess of the earth. And the deity Jomo Mio Langsangma that lives at the summit on her tiger, she gets to decide who visits and who's allowed to go back down.
Yeah.
And so they very much view Mount Everest as mother goddess of the earth, and they have for centuries, if not millennia.
Yeah.
So it's very steeped in the Buddhist religion there, and it just feels like a very spiritual, sacred place to me every time I visit.
Yeah. So I've only had the opportunity to summit Everest once. I've been to Everest Base Camp, leading treks to Everest Base Camp many times. So I've only been to the summit once, but it was a very, it was an amazing experience for me. It was a transformative experience for me. And I think a lot of people have the same experience on Everest. Everest has given me a lot, back from that experience. Having summited it 14 times, does it seem just as special now as it used to when it was your first or second or third time?
It's different for me. The first time for me was very much about me getting to the top of the mountain and fulfilling this lifelong dream that I thought was nearly unattainable. So that experience, getting to the top for the first time, taking in the views, the sensation, the feeling, calling my parents on the satellite telephone. It was like 6 a.m. Nepal time, 6 p.m. in Seattle. They're having dinner, and getting to thank them for all of their support, understanding, and love over the years was really special. And since then, going back as a guide or expedition leader, helping other climbers, in their endeavor to reach the top of the mountain and fulfill their goals, their dreams. It's different for me now, and it's a change to where I feel like I'm contributing and helping, enabling others to fulfill their own goals. So it's really special for me to feel like I'm part of their journey, their experience. But I also enjoy being at the top as well, taking in the view and just the overall feeling of spirituality up there.
Yeah, and I think that's the hallmark of a great guide is somebody who gets enjoyment out of helping other people achieve their goals, being that leader that makes it possible for people to do things. In our leadership training world, we talk a lot about servant leadership, and as a leader, your job is as a servant to your team to help your team achieve whatever it is they want to achieve, and that's kind of experience. Madison Mountaineering, you started that around 10 years ago and have grown very quickly and become one of North America's leading guiding services. And tell us a little bit about, just so people know, they want to give you a call and sign up for an expedition. Tell us a bit about your trips.
Sure. Yeah, it's been just over 10 years since I founded my company, Madison Mountaineering. I just wanted to do more, go to more places, more summits. So I left my former employer, Alpine Ascents, and went off on my own. We offer trips to the 7 summits, many of the 8,000 meter peaks, and other notable mountains all over the globe. So I have a great guide team, some Americans and then others, South Americans, Sherpa on the team, and really feel lucky to be able to do what I love and make a career out of it.
Yeah. And if somebody who wanted to climb the 7 summits, what advice would you give somebody who said, "Hey, Garrett, I want to climb 7 summits. How should I go about doing this?"
Well, I'd start off with a little hiking, backpacking, maybe go for one of the easier peaks first, like Kilimanjaro. But it never hurts to have more mountaineering experience. So if there's an area nearby where they can get off into the hills, to just start training and learning technical skills, getting some expedition experience, some high altitude experience. And I would say don't rush into it. Build it out over a number of years where you can really stretch out the journey and enjoy it. Maybe one peak every year, or every 2-3 years.
Yeah, so many people these days seem to be in a rush, right? They want to get it done in a year. And it's such a rich experience that I think if you're rushing it, you're going to miss out on some of that experience, I think.
Yeah.
Just my opinion anyways. But so let's get into some leadership and team topics right now. So you've been leading countless expeditions in some very extreme environments. So first of all, when you're thinking about yourself as a guide, as a leader, you're thinking about the people you bring on as leaders for Madison Mountaineering. How do you define a great leader on a mountaineering expedition?
Well, a great leader on a mountaineering expedition would need to have the depth and breadth of experience for the mountain they are leading on. So just a lot of time in similar terrain, similar mountains, managing teams, so that they're very confident with how to go about leading the group up and down the mountain safely. And of course, in the mountains, things change constantly. The weather's changing, the route conditions are changing, individual climber health is changing. So we really have to evaluate risk on a moment by moment basis as it applies to our team and the conditions on the mountain. So just being cognizant of the risk, the evolving conditions on the expedition, but also knowing when to push things a little bit, when to turn it up a notch in terms of advancing forward on the expedition, getting to the summit, getting down safely. So obviously a leader would need lots and lots of experience, but also some good personal attributes which lend one's personality towards leadership.
Yeah, 'cause certainly the technical background is important, but then it's all about how you interact with the team members, because you have to, as you say, change is always happening, and you have to help guide people through that. And people have a certain expectation or think they're going to be doing something on a certain day, and then it doesn't happen. And so, as a leader, so what kind of personality traits do you look for in somebody who you want to bring on as a leader for your expeditions?
Well, beyond the technical proficiency and competency to be operating or managing a team in that terrain, that environment, I look for leaders that are very supportive of their team members, and leaders that might ask themselves what they can contribute to the team that will be in alignment with accomplishing our goals being safety, completing the objective, reaching the summit, getting down safely, and also having a good time, an enjoyable and fun experience.
Yeah.
So with those three primary goals, what can I do? What can I contribute as a leader so that we can accomplish those things?
Yeah. So you're a leader on mountain expeditions or and other adventure expeditions, but then you also run a business. Do you find there you have to be a different leader from a business leader and an expedition leader? Do you find any differences between those two?
Some differences, but a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
Too, a lot of crossover. Yeah. I think, gosh, with business leadership as well as expedition leadership, we have to know where we're going. We have to be able to make decisions quickly and stick by them. We have to evaluate risk, see what's not working or what could potentially be dangerous or fatal to the expedition, to the business. So I think there is a lot of crossover.
Yeah. On expeditions, sometimes you've got people with some big personalities. You've got people with some who are very driven, and they've got goals. They've invested a lot to be here. Sometimes you can get egos. You can get people who are, behaving in a way that is maybe contrary to the team. Have you had much experience with that type of interactions on an expedition, and how do you deal with those egos and disruptive behaviors, perhaps?
Well, there's no easy way. Hopefully everyone coming into the team is aligned with supporting the team and the overall goals. And I find that just so important for everyone's success, because I see it time and time again especially on Everest, where climbers who are on a team where they're supporting each other are much more successful in the end in accomplishing their goals than climbers who are going at it alone. Because as soon as an issue comes up, like a equipment failure, malfunction, or the conditions become more challenging, or the weather changes, it's easier to solve these things and continue towards our goal if we have a supportive group of people who all have experience and can work together to accomplish the goal, whereas individuals tend to have a tougher time and will turn back sooner.
It seems that there's so many expeditions on Everest these days are a group of individuals. They aren't a team anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the trend has been leaning towards what you just described, where teams are made up of individuals sharing some base camp logistics, maybe a permit or a dining tent, but they're really all kind of going on their own schedule. And I understand that appeals to some people. They feel like they have more freedom and flexibility, or maybe they're not holding anyone else back. But I think the way we're doing things as a team, where everyone trains together, supports each other, climbs together, I think there's much more value in that when it comes to the bigger challenges like Everest or K2.
And I believe that I think you as an individual have a greater, more satisfying experience because of the team experience, not just the individual accomplishment. Like you can kind of elevate that accomplishment a little bit more. So teams, you have to build a team almost overnight sometimes in order to work together to be effective, safe, support each other, trust each other on a mountain. So, earlier I asked you, how would you define a great leader? How would you define a great team on an expedition? What would you put as the definition of a team for an Everest expedition or K2 expedition?
Well, obviously the technical competency, the experience that's applicable, but beyond that, I think a great team is made up of individuals that are all focused on the same goals, sharing the same goals, and also contributing whatever they can towards a positive outcome, rather than contributing negativity or creating issues or problems. And we all know some people love to create drama, right?
Mm-hmm.
And divert attention away from the goals of the expedition to themselves.
Yeah.
So I try not to bring that into the team. Sometimes a climber will slip through the cracks and make it onto the expedition. But gosh, if everyone is contributing, putting their best foot forward, bringing their best version of themselves to the expedition, to the dining tent, in their communication interactions with the other team members, I think that is just golden and goes so far in a positive and successful experience.
Yeah, and you need to set that up from the beginning, because the really stressful times often come later on in the expedition, and you want people to be prepared for it. I'm sure you spent many hours, many days kind of socked in at Vinson High Camp when you can't move. You're stuck in a tent for days and on other mountains, and sometimes people can get a little bit squirrely and a little bit anxious in those environments. And so you have to have the team philosophy set up ahead of time so that you can hopefully deal with that more effectively when it occurs.
Yes.
Now, you have brought in some pretty famous guest guides, or I don't know what you would call them, guest leaders, such as Ed Viesturs, such as Conrad Anker. What do you think they contribute to the team? What do they bring to the experience for people?
Well, selfishly, both Ed Viesturs and Conrad Anker have been heroes of mine since I was a teenager, and as heroes, legends, maybe even I could say mentors. Some of the time I've followed them. I feel really lucky that they've chosen to do a few climbs with me.
Yeah.
Conrad in Antarctica, a couple of expeditions, and Ed in Antarctica, and also Aconcagua, and we're trying to plan some other climbs as well. So just feel so lucky that they've chosen to team up with me.
Yeah.
And I think they have such a wealth of experience from their lives climbing all over the world, and slightly different focuses. Ed was focused on the bigger peaks, 8,000 meter peaks, without oxygen, without big levels of support, more individual with his climbing partners, and Conrad on some very technical alpine climbs. And they each bring just a wealth of knowledge and experience, and leadership too, how to get through tough situations, how to stay positive, how to stay focused. So I feel like they've contributed a lot to our teams on these peaks.
Yeah, I know. You may recall, it was a few years ago now. I think it was 2020, Vinson Base Camp, and I was having a bit of a challenging experience on that particular time, and I was over hanging out with you and Conrad a little bit, and you guys were trying to mentoring me a little bit and trying to keep me in a positive place with some negative challenges that I was facing. So that was great to have you and Conrad there to help me.
Good. I'll have to tell you. So on that specific climb, we had been up at Vinson High Camp, and the weather was not great. We thought we had an opportunity to go for the summit, and so we all rallied and climbed up about 3/4 of the way to the summit, and then the wind just hammered us, and we retreated back to High Camp. And we kind of had our heads down, our tails between our legs, and we realized with the new weather forecast that we might have to stay up there for days and days and days. We couldn't even get down. The winds were so high, and So we were pretty bummed out. And I remember the next day we were in the dining tent. It's just hammering with the wind and snow, blizzard outside. And Conrad said, "Oh, this is just like when we were on Meru, climbing that new route. And we had to ration our ramen and other food supplies." And he kind of gave everyone the pep talk with some tough love, and everyone responded well to it. It was like, okay, we got to be tough and work together here. And then surprisingly, the next day was perfect when we woke up. It wasn't supposed to be good, but it was a perfect bluebird day. And Conrad was the first one out of the tent, rallying everybody, saying, "Weather's great, let's go. We got the opportunity." And so we went and climbed that day. It was great. Had a fantastic summit. Got back to camp, and then had a couple more bad weather days where we had to hunker down. And then eventually we descended back to base camp. But it was really, really good that he shared with us some of that wisdom up there to get through the storm, stay positive, and then take advantage of that good summit day when it presented itself.
Yeah. So, you've mentioned change a number of times, and in the leadership training world and in the expedition world as well, we often say that change is the only constant, right? No 2 days are ever like, no plan ever goes exactly as you think it's going to go. So when a dramatic change occurs, and I keep been talking about this a little bit, how do you as a leader process it? And then how do you share it with the team?
Yeah, well, I agree with everything you just said. And when a big change occurs, when things go sideways on the mountain, I might have an initial thought of how to proceed, but I'll try to collaborate with my colleagues up there, whether it's guides on my own team or Sherpa or guides leading other expeditions for other companies. I find there's a lot of value in collaboration and talking things through. One example I can think of is when we were on Everest at Camp 2 in 2015, when the Nepal earthquake happened on April 25th. And it was a big surprise to everyone, obviously. And the route from base camp through the Khumbu Icefall to Camp 1 had been so shaken up that the fixed lines, the ladders were all broken, out of place. And so theoretically, no one could ascend or descend that part of the mountain. I'm sure if we had to, we could have installed some ropes and found a way to get down. But we ended up all flying off by helicopter. But it was nice there at the time just to collaborate with some of the other expedition leaders, good friends, even to this day.
Yeah. Yep. And when all these things happen, these very challenging events, and that change the approach, change the outcome, change. So resilience is super important. You need to get up the next day and keep on going. And so how, as a leader, how do you coach teams and individuals to be resilient in those difficult times?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think when tragedy strikes, it's hard not to let our emotions out sometimes, and we have to do that. But we also have to stay focused on the task at hand. And rather than letting ourselves become overcome with emotions, we need to stay focused on what we have to do to fulfill our mission. So I've had to give some talks to our teams when we've gone through an emotional ordeal, but we still are on the mountain and we have to get down safely. So just talking through the immediacy of the day ahead, staying focused on clipping into the fixed ropes, not falling into crevasses, taking care of ourselves with food, water, sunscreen, staying close to other climbers, good communication, all of those things that ensure or lend to a good outcome. So just staying focused on that immediacy.
Now, you've talked a lot about various different trips and different teams. Can you tell us about a story of a team, something that stands out for you, an amazing team, an amazing experience, an experience where teamwork kind of made the difference between success and failure, perhaps?
Yeah, gosh. Well, so many times.
So many.
My first trip to K2 in 2014, we were getting ready to go for the summit push from high camp. and it was just our team. So myself, 2 climbers, Alan Arnett and Matt Dupuy, and 3 climbing Sherpa, all from Nepal, who I knew very well. One of which is Kami Rita Sherpa, who has the record for the most summits of Everest now. And we left for the summit that night about 10 p.m. Some climbers had been up the day before, but the route had been totally filled in with deep snow. And I remember being out front breaking trail around midnight or 1 a.m. underneath the big serac that's overhanging the bottleneck. It can be a very intimidating place, and looking up at this big black wall. And I was so tired breaking trail. And I stopped for a minute, and then one of the other climbers said, "Hey, let me take over and jump in front." And he started breaking trail. And then we kept rotating out, and just having that support really made it possible for us to get to the top. I was definitely having my doubts for a moment in time, but when the team comes together and other members can be encouraging and provide positivity and a pat on the back and say, "Hey, we got this. Let's keep going. Let's work together to make it happen." That's when I find we're very successful.
Yeah, and as a leader, you're often out front, but you don't have to be out front, right? It's sometimes it's giving other people the opportunity to be out front, and that can change their experience and give them a whole different experience that they might not have had otherwise. And knowing when to jump forward as a leader, when to step back as a leader. So I'm gonna start to wrap it up here. We've had it's amazing to hear some of the various different stories and tying it into leadership and team performance. If you were to give kind of your advice, key advice to any leaders, whether it be business leaders, whether it be expedition leaders, what would you share with people that you think are the priorities for being a great leader?
Wow. Priorities for being a great leader in the mountains and business. I think just doing what we love, what we're truly passionate about, and identifying the goals, how to get there, and then surrounding ourselves with like-minded people, capable people that we resonate with, who can help us get to where we want to go, and not being afraid to talk things through, to collaborate with others. I find that when I get stuck somewhere, whether it's on a mountain or in business and life, if I can lean on mentors or colleagues, trusted friends, other guides, that really means a lot to me and can help me navigate through the situation that's holding me back.
Yeah, knowing that we're not in it alone, and being humble enough as a leader to ask other people for their ideas, their opinions, and to collaborate. And I think we have a much greater outcome when we approach leadership that way.
I think so too. Yeah, and just one point to reiterate. So on expeditions, we always want to hear from everyone, right? Everyone's a stakeholder on the expedition. Mm-hmm. And we do want to hear from everyone. We value everyone's opinion, but at the end of the day, there has to be a leader who makes the decision and everyone follows through. And if there's any question about who's in charge and who the leader is, I've seen things not go well, right? Mm-hmm. You need one dictator, benevolent dictator, and everyone else to fall in line. But the dictator should use the opinions of the team to formulate their own decision.
Yeah, we talk about in our leadership training lots of different leadership styles, and being an authoritarian leader, maybe a little bit a more palatable title than a dictator, but same thing, exact same thing. Gather the information, but then somebody's got to make a decision. And there are times when it's a very collaborative approach. There's a time when it's a facilitative approach, but there are times, especially in a situation such as a mountaineering expedition, where it's dangerous and there's a lot on the line here. That's when you need to have that expert who is going to make a call, and then everybody needs to follow through. I always say, if one person on the team decides not to buy into it, then it's going to be very difficult to achieve your goals.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks, Garrett, for spending a bit of time with us today, sharing your incredible stories, your insights around teams and leadership. For those of you who are listening, I hope you enjoyed today's episodes. Hope it helps you to reach new heights in your leadership and building high performance teams in your world. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, Garrett. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Cheers.